The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Bonnie, are you on?
Yeah, but I can't hear anything.
I can hear her very faint in the background. Hannah, are you there?
You want us to shoot an email link? Something's happened to us, Liza.
Yeah. They said they're in the webinar studio.
I don't know what it will do if I send an email from my, since I'm logged in.
Oh, I just shot an email off to Heather.
Oh, okay.
I would hang up though.
Should we take this and put it in there? Is that what the problem is? Can somebody take this and
Heather, are you there?
I have to realize it because they're talking.
I heard her for a second there.
Yep.
Hello, everyone. I'm really sorry for the technical difficulties. We're going to reconvene. As we look at our chart here of the current prepaid market overview, and I know some of you may not have heard the beginning of our presentation, but these stats are really speak to the fact that the prepaid market and the prepaid market trends are growing. And as you look at the segments, the government segments, both at state and federal level, and the private segments that facilitate payroll payments, gift card payments, and employee incentive payments on prepaid cards is also growing. Look at what Mercator says is happening in the year 2013. All of these segments are going to experience a growth as it pertains to the use of prepaid within their entity. So then let's talk about so what are those prepaid trends? What is happening to those? Well, there's a couple of things that is making this industry so much more visible throughout the U.S., and that would be the regulations, both at a state level and at a federal level. More states now think that prepaid cards are a good idea. In fact, paying employees with cards today, there's about 25 states. There are 25 states that will allow employees to receive their pay either through direct deposit or pay card, a prepaid method. The federal government has thought prepaid has been a good idea for a long time. In fact, in 2007, with the formulation of Regulation E, that meant that consumers would be receiving a lot of rights, consumer rights, as they move to the prepaid platform. And then let's talk about what's happening to the traditional bank costs and how they've increased. That is really driving the prepaid sector as well. When consumers, some of your employees perhaps, cannot afford a bank account because that's how banks are going to start making more money. They're going to raise the price of owning a bank account. So you're seeing the trend to drive in toward pay card is suddenly elevated. So I want to ask Keela to talk about what some of the prepaid applications are that we've been talking about, just to enlighten the group on what this first and second slide was depicting.
Thank you, Carole. You know, chances are you're all familiar with at least one prepaid card application. In fact, a recent survey given by the Network Branded Prepaid Card Association stated that 74% of the respondents were very familiar with prepaid platforms. However, you might not be as familiar with many of the different ways you can use a prepaid application to reduce expenses and streamline your processes. You know, we've listed some of these on this slide. However, later on, you're going to hear from our panelists today about two very, one pretty common way to use a prepaid platform, a pay card, and then you're going to hear about a more unique way of using a prepaid application. And that's going to be described by DexOne, our guest today. They use prepaid for employee incentives, per diem for new hires, and customer refunds. At this time, we're going to do an online poll, which should be very fun. So as you see the poll appear on the screen, go ahead and answer this question, and we're going to report back to you the results. So what percentage of your employees currently receive a paper paycheck? Go ahead and take a minute to fill out, to answer this question, and we'll show you the results. All right. The result, 0 to 10% receive paper paychecks. Very interesting, and thank you for doing that. You know, we've talked about the different prepaid applications, And so now we're going to talk about, the need for these prepaid applications. I mean, why? Why is there such a need? 80 million underbanked or unbanked consumers in the U.S., 1.5 billion spent annually on check cashing, 4 million lost or stolen paychecks. And you see the cards, there is a need because cards are less than 1/5 the cost of check cashing. And guess what? These stats could represent, or probably they do represent your employees, your vendors, your customers. So these particular consumers, we call them cash-based consumers, and those are consumers who get paid in cash or paid bills with cash, are very responsive to an employee-provided payroll card, for example. And in fact, these cash-based consumers are more favorable towards an employer who gives them the option of an electronic pay, either pay card or direct deposit. And overwhelmingly, when you talk about prepaid, a respondent in a recent survey, again given by the NBPCA, the Network Branded Prepaid Card Association, stated the real benefits that they perceive from a prepaid platform or application are security, convenience, and control. One of the last boxes down here, which is very a good segue into our next slide, is the average cost to produce a paper check. According to the APA, this cost has risen to $4.40. So let's delve into those costs, because no matter what application you're using or thinking of using when it comes to prepaid, most companies still process the majority of their payables via a paper check. And after we go over some of these costs, if one of your initiatives, either from a corporate perspective or department perspective, is not to eliminate as many paper checks as possible, we think that it should be. If you look at some of these costs, we're not going to go read through them all, but let's look at a few here. Check cashing fees, we've talked about. Stop payment fees, reissuing checks, check fraud, overnight delivery. As you can see, there are lots of costs associated with this. In addition, there are some costs to your employees as well. I mean, these are all just employer costs, but if you think about it, if you have an employee coming in to pick up their check on their day off, that's their time, and then they're going to spend their fuel money to come in and receive that check. So it is a waste of their time and plus some hard costs for that employee. Before we go on to the next slide, we're going to do another online poll. And go ahead as before, answer this one, and we will share the results. What are your biggest paperless solution challenges for the remainder of this year and next year? All right, 37% said that employee buy-in would be the biggest challenge. Interesting. All right, I'd like for Carole to now to join us again and talk about some value proposition to both the company and the cardholder.
Thank you, Keela. Well, this is just really when we start talking about the company value proposition, this is really a prelude to what you're going to hear from our two panelists today. But suffice it to say that if we start with any one of these, the value proposition listed on this slide, I would say cost savings is just to further Keela's discussion, cost savings to an organization is enormous. When you think about the fact that you can reduce your cost of check production, check distribution, the reconciliation of a check of any kind, and then of course the bank charges associated with any kind of check. And then also think about what is happening with those lost and stolen checks. What does it cost you to stop payment? What does it cost you to reissue and redistribute one? The cost savings is tremendous. And then when you look at the compliance, any company, whether it's employer paying employees or trying to issue a consumer rebate or give an incentive card out on a timely basis because they felt somebody did a good job, we want to make the compliance issues here are enormous because electronic paid, it's a fact. You don't have to wait for it to be delivered by a courier. You don't have to wait for bad weather. This helps ensure the on-time delivery of any type of payment. And in the payroll world, that's really big. And there's a lot of states that stipulate that employees must be paid on time on payday. Last but not least, a paper check requires organizations to have to report those unclaimed properties, pieces of property, those uncashed checks. Those obligations go away when paper is eliminated. But let me speak, and then we can segue into the next slide about the employee goodwill. When you talk about cost savings for the company and subsequently the employer, they're enormous. But to an employee and the goodwill, you are giving them absolutely more convenience, more flexibility, more security, and more control, as Keela said. And you're putting them in a world that they're not used to today. So when you think about giving them cards to receive their payroll funds, or giving them a card with their name on it that says, hey, you did a good job, here's your incentive or reward card, you're really instilling that piece of plastic as being their gateway into utilizing their funds very, very differently than they do today. So let's talk about that cardholder value proposition. What is the cost to them? I think we saw that on a couple slides ago. The cost of utilizing any kind of a prepaid card is about 1/5 the cost of what it might cost them to cash a check. It's less expensive. It's more flexible. MasterCard has 25 million locations worldwide. And when you put this card in anybody's hands, you're giving them the buying power of those 25 million locations to use for goods, for services, to pay bills. You're suddenly putting these cardholders in a world that they're not familiar with. And of course, their lifestyle. The prestige of a bank-like features with web access, phone access, access to their data without having a bank account, and it being less expensive is a huge value proposition for the cardholders. And so let's talk about when organizations make a decision to eliminate paper, whether it's in their payroll department, their HR department, whether it's in their operations, or even their retail department, you have to implement this program. And implementation is critical. I think you're going to hear that from our panelists here in a moment. Executive buy-in is key. If you don't have that buy-in up at the top, it's not going to, your implementation may stall. It's different factions within your company. But you only do that by having a consistent message, not only to your executive management, but to your rank and file, and subsequently to that base of employees that will be utilizing this prepaid vehicle rather than a check. Having a dedicated support team and having regular communications within that team back to the employee base or the consumer base is very key. And most organizations, they do it right. They do it. They prove the concept within their own organization. Make sure everything worked. If it didn't work right the first time, this is the time to change that, to change up your approach. Proof of concept is very key to a successful implementation. And then, of course, what do you do to track and measure the success of the program? Every company is going to have their own criteria, but I would submit to you that you have those tracking and measurables available so that you feel good about what your savings was, what your efficiencies were that you gained, what was the goodwill that you were able to permeate throughout your organization. So with that, let me just get let me just get our expert on the phone, one of our experts on our call with us. It's my pleasure to introduce Liza Paparella of Omni Hotels and Resorts. Liza is Director of Payroll and was very instrumental in implementing this program at the Omni Hotel and Resorts Corporation. With that, Liza, take it away.
Thank you, Carole. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for joining. As Carole mentioned, I am the Director of Payroll for Omni Hotels and Resorts, and I joined the company in mid-2007. Didn't take me very long to see that we needed some sort of a solution to be put into place. Let me tell you a little bit about the company, first of all. We do operate 50 properties throughout the United States, Canada, and Mexico. We control and we manage 43 separate payrolls within the United States. We currently have a little over 11,000 associates, and throughout the course of the year, we probably, through the end of the year with some turnover, we produce about 15,000 W-2 forms. We do have a very diverse workforce, full-time, part-time, seasonal. Of our 43 separate payrolls, 8 are produced weekly, 35 are produced biweekly. So as you can see, we have a pretty complex payroll setup. We are running payroll every single week. As I mentioned, it didn't take me too long after joining the company to realize that, we had a mountain of paper being produced. At that time, we were producing about 135,000 paper paychecks throughout the country. And we had many challenges that were related to those paper paychecks, as many of you may be experiencing today. The challenges were being addressed at a very high cost to the company. Some of these you have already heard about. Lots of lost paychecks. So from all over our properties, paychecks are being lost. Of course, we can make stop payments on those checks to do a reissue. However, it's going to take the associate a couple of days to get that reissued paycheck because we need to get confirmation from the bank that it indeed did not cash. We also saw fraudulent check issues coming through with our paper checks. We do use a positive pay system with the bank, and as you know, the positive pay system itself is a costly expense, but it's a really good preventive measure that many companies do use. One of the challenges with the positive pay is that because we have all these separate payrolls being produced throughout our properties, there are times when the Director of Finance or somebody in the finance department may forget to upload that positive pay file to the bank. And so the associate goes to the bank to cash their check, and their check is not showing as a legitimate check, and so they're turned away. So there were just lots of issues that were coming into play, and they were very evident to me when I did step into the role. For those reasons, we began to look at an electronic solution. And I did get company buy-in, the executive buy-in, to move to being an electronic payer. We do require all of our properties where we are able to mandate it for the employees to have a choice between direct deposit with a bank account and or the pay card. To go over the program with you, early communication to the associates is really key. I'm a big advocate on early and frequent communication. Many people, as you know, I mean, it's just a natural tendency to be reluctant to change, hesitant to change. And the associates need time to digest, to know that there's a change that's coming. I need to make a choice between direct deposit and pay card. And so early communication really is very important. We used pay stuffers just to say, we are becoming an electronic employer effective with this date. We put posters up. We used our intranet to do postings. We implemented a direct deposit campaign with each and every property. We contacted the local banks to come on site and help us to sign associates up for direct deposit for those who didn't already have a bank account. Many of our associates are unbankable or just simply don't care to deal with the bank. And so following the direct deposit campaign at each of our properties, then we actually went on site to do pay card educational sessions. The sessions were very, very interesting, and it was just it was eye-opening for the associates to see how pay cards are truly a benefit to them, or electronic pay is truly a benefit to them. During our sessions, our goal was to teach the associate and the managers in the properties how to use the card. Again, as I mentioned, there are so many benefits available, or so many benefits that are evident from the program itself. One of the ways that we approached the educational sessions right off the bat was to just identify, yes, pay card programs do have fees for them. This is how the company makes their money. However, we are here to show you how to reduce or minimize your fees altogether. We want you to keep more money in your pocket. We want to maximize your savings. As you heard in one of the earlier slides from Keela, there are significant check cashing fees throughout the country. You've got your corner grocery stores, the mom and pop shops that are happy to cash your check for a big fee. The corner check cashing stores that, this is their business, this is what they do. And what we found throughout all of our properties, the average check cashing fee was about 3%. And so what we did as we rolled out through the educational session was we actually used a whiteboard in the front of the training room and just asked for a volunteer. Hey, how are you cashing your check today? Do you mind telling us how much you're paying for it? And so we illustrated for them what the check cashing fee added up to over the course of the year. And so we addressed the fees right off of the bat, and that really settled everybody back into their chairs. They were very willing to listen to the program. And then we showed them through the slides, through our presentation, what the pay card fees were, but how they could also minimize them. Another key was we demonstrated all the benefits to them, lots of other benefits that come along with electronic pay. Some of these you have heard about in the earlier slides. Very reliable. Your pay is loaded onto your pay card by 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. on payday. Very secure. The cards are safe. They're FDIC insured. Your funds are FDIC insured on them. If you lose your paycheck, yes, we can go ahead and we can do a stop payment and we can reissue that check to you. However, it might be a couple days. If you've already cashed that paycheck and now you lost your cash, you are out of luck. If you lose your pay card, you are simply losing a piece of plastic. And we have additional cards on site that can be issued to you and activated within just a couple of hours. So we really demonstrated the security and the safety to them. Not to mention the time savings and the convenience. No need to come into the property or into the office on payday if you're not scheduled to work. You don't need to come in and pick up a paycheck any longer. Your card is already loaded. You are ready to go. So, we really illustrated that. That you could be on vacation and you could be laying on the beach and your money is on your card, so you are good to go. So we really emphasized the benefits of the card, and that really was very, very successful for us. The next part of the program overview is that we provided internal training to our finance, payroll, and our associate service centers on what their internal rules would be. As I mentioned, because we have payrolls being processed at all the properties, we did provide each of the properties with what's referred to as an instant issue card stock, so that if somebody does lose their card, or if their card becomes damaged, if they crack it or something like that, our properties do have card stock on hand, and they're able to issue a replacement card out within, generally 20 minutes of a visit to the Associate Service Center. And so we did some internal training just so that we could let finance and payroll and the Associate Service Center personnel know exactly what their role would be in it. And lastly, we were very clear on defining what our home office roles and responsibilities would be. We've got a payroll office of 4 individuals who support all of those payrolls that are going on all the time. And so what we did was we clearly defined who would be responsible for loading off-cycle pay issues, invoice reconciliation, monitoring our export that goes out to the company, just in general fielding questions from the Associate Service Center offices, and just ongoing paper check monitoring that was through the whole implementation phase so that we could gauge our results. Okay. The program results, you can see everybody is very happy with it. We started out with 135,000 paper paychecks, and we have converted 95% of those associates over to electronic pay. They are very happy. We have a small percentage of pays that are still being issued, and those are basically just our new hires who are using direct deposit, and they have a pre-note period, so they're going to get a paper check during that first period. And then also we have a couple other areas where we cannot mandate electronic pay, so we do have a few checks here and there. The associates are very happy with the program. Again, we went in and we dispelled all their fears about fees and complications in using it. We showed them exactly how to use their card. We showed them that, they have more dollars at their disposal. Their funds are secure. They're not wasting time and gas and, effort to go in and pick up paychecks any longer. Our Treasury is very happy. Banking issues and the banking fees have greatly minimized, just a huge savings. Finance is happy, all of our folks in our finance department. If any of you have ever been involved in the escheatment process to the states reporting unclaimed property, you know that that is a challenge in itself. And so that has greatly reduced because we don't have checks any longer that are not being cashed. So finance is very happy. Naturally, our senior management and our ownership are very happy. We have realized just within our first year alone a cost savings of over $80,000 in in printing supplies such as Micker toner and bank fees. And so everybody has really, really benefited from the program, and they're very, very pleased with it. Keys to success, again, I'll just reiterate a few things I did talk about earlier. Early communication is very key. Again, the associates and the management at the properties need to digest the changes coming. I highly recommend, have yourself a rock-solid presentation. Have your slides ready to go. What we did within our team was we played devil's advocate. We asked each other questions. What if this? How do I handle this? What if this happens? Really play devil's advocate. Make it poke-proof. Anticipate the questions. Have answers ready. You really need to be very confident on your feet when somebody is asking you a question. We added fun to the program launch. That was really a big key for us, and I would highly recommend that to you if you're considering rolling out a pay card program. We used preloaded pay cards as prizes for attending the educational sessions. So as associates came in, we dropped their name in a hat, and as long as they stayed through the entire presentation, at the end of the presentation, after we had done all the Q&A, we drew a winner for the preloaded pay card. And before that winner even left the room, we helped them to activate their card, set up their PIN and their access ID, and they could see how easy it was. And then they went out and they actually tested the card out themselves, and they had some money to spend. And that word of mouth on how easy the program was and how user-friendly it was priceless for us. And so I highly encourage, if you're able to do something like that, to go ahead and do that. Next is make sure that your home office team is ready to provide lots of internal support. During the implementation, you will have lots of questions coming in, and you just need to be ready for them. So, this is a time during implementation when you really don't want to have other big projects going on. Of course, we're able to keep up with our daily work. However, you just don't want to have anything else really big going on or on the table at the same time. You do need to provide some support for at least the first, 3 to 4 weeks. And as the associates and the managers become more familiar with it, then that really dissipates. And lastly, my recommendation is become best friends with your support team. Your implementation team for your pay card provider is really key. They have all the answers. No question is too small for them. And so by all means, if you have any questions, you really want to make sure you know the answers. And so you want to stay in very close support team. And Carol, that's everything I have. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you, Liza. We appreciate your information on the pay card application. At this time, I would like to introduce our next customer panelist from DexOne, Bonnie Hooks. Bonnie is Director of Procure to Pay, and Tom Girman, he's the Senior Manager of Procure to Pay. And DexOne uses our prepaid application in a little bit different way for their employee incentives, per diem for new hires, and customer refunds. And I'm very pleased to introduce Bonnie and Tom.
Thank you, Keela, and hello to everyone out on that's listening in. Great opportunity to get to speak with you today. If I may, let me share some insight on who DexOne is. We're a leading marketing solution company with a focus on local businesses, and I just want to share with you, too, some of our core offerings is online and mobile search solutions, print yellow page directories, voice-based search platforms, and one of the largest pay-per-click ad networks in the U.S. So I've got to take a moment to do that little sales pitch for you. We have throughout 70 offices located in the U.S. and the corporate office here in Cary, North Carolina. We have around 3,180 associates, and 80% of those associates are part of our sales organization. And before implementing Comdata's expense reimburse program for customer refunds and also their corporate spend program, which enabled us to do per diems to our sales organization, the new hires, we were manually loading these checks at a cost, you see, of $4 to $5. So I want to turn it over to Tom Girman and let him have a few moments with you to speak to the program overview and the results of what we were able to do by eliminating this manual process.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just want to go over some items on the program overview. One of our early challenges was our senior management came to us and said, look, you guys really have to knuckle down and optimize and streamline your procure-to-pay processes. And that really is how we sort of kicked off an extensive search for a best-in-class partner. Our needs were pretty simple. We needed a flexible platform, and the card-based payment solutions really made a lot of sense to us. So because we, like many others, have limited resources to work with, one of the things we were looking for early on, and one of the keys to success in our program, was finding a resource that was able to provide support and a clear, clean implementation process. We found very early on that working with Comdata really became a true partnership. And as we faced several different challenges that we'll talk about here in a minute, Comdata was able to provide some pretty innovative solutions for us. One of our early needs was finding a better way to make payment on per diem expenses for prospective employees. We have a program where before we hire our salespeople, they have to go through a training program, and we have to provide stipends to cover their expenses while they're in training. And because they're not employees at that point in time, we have to run off-cycle checks, and provide paper checks to these folks until we came up with the prepaid debit card solution. And it really was a big hit with this group of people because a lot of them were out of pocket. They might not have been able to get to their bank to cash the checks that we provided them. So now in their welcome packet, when they come into training on the first day, they have this loaded, it's a prepaid debit card, and they're able to use those funds, almost anywhere. So that was really a big win for us. The next solution that Comdata was able to provide was, again, us providing paper checks to refund our customers when they overpaid on their bills, and that happened with great frequency. So, here again, we applied, the use of the prepaid cards going out to the suppliers, to the customers, and not only did it take care of all the issues we had with handling paper checks, but it also took care of the achievement process that was, talked about earlier. That unclaimed property process, if you have to deal with it, is, really messy and involves a lot of people. And then, the latest application that we're currently using now is creating an incentive program. We've actually been paying our sales folks incentives for some time now using these cards, but we're looking to roll this out company-wide. And again, using the reloadable prepaid card, really has lots of benefits and has really gone over well with the sales team. Throughout all of this, Comdata provided training support as well as dedicated project management. And again, we're not, real heavy in staff, so we didn't have a lot of project management people available to take this on. So that help was really key for us. And we've really gotten to know, as you can imagine, some of Comdata's folks very well over the implementation of these projects. So if we can move on to results that we've seen. The bottom line here is that the expectations for savings and process improvements that we were looking for not only were met but were exceeded. We've gained process efficiencies in all of the programs that we've launched, and we've grown with Comdata through a number of different programs, starting with virtual cards and purchasing cards, and then moved on to these more innovative solutions. And because of each prior program success, we continue to look to Comdata to help expand the use of these cards and really get ourselves into the 21st century here. In terms of per diem cards, I've kind of already mentioned that we've eliminated the cost of manual and off-cycle checks, and the convenience to the trainees who get these cards has really been well received. So a lot of benefit there for us. And on the customer refund card, the cost of check distribution is way down. I think we're doing less than 10% of the checks we used to do at this point in time. And the cost of running manual and off-cycle checks is virtually gone, and the achievement issues, which were really burdensome to us, have been taken care of. Our estimates are somewhere in the neighborhood of $360,000 in operational savings from implementing, in particular, this customer refund program. As a result of all this, we do have happy leadership. One thing I want to mention is that we have not had to add any resources at all to manage these programs, and that's really key, especially in this environment. And Bonnie and I both kind of now look forward to running into the CFO on the elevator every now and again, because he really is a happy camper with the programs that we've launched here.
And if we can move to the keys to success, and thank you, Tom. It's to Tom's point. It is executive sponsorship is very valuable, and we have got that here at DexOne, and we're very excited about that because we report to finance, so it's great to be able to give them these results and these cost savings. And the biggest thing is that we can express to them how excited we are for the partnership we have with Comdata. And organizational commitment is always key, not only in the granular part of the team members that make this happen for DexOne, but also you need all your business owners, because there's a lot of people that touches our customers, especially on the customer refund part. And of course, we want our new sales teams to be impressed with what we can do for them as if they become an employee. So you need their commitment, and you need to celebrate that too, not only internally but externally out to the business owners. And internally, we make it a lot of fun too. That when the team shows their commitment, we meet our goals, we get all these programs implemented. We try to share a tray of cookies and make it feel good for them. And it is a clear value proposition working with Comdata on this, because we've definitely seen cost savings by eliminating manual processes. They're definitely a solution provider and a problem solver for us as well. And of course, you got to have an honest and ethical approach. We need to make sure that all the project managers on both sides of the company understands what we're going for and how we want to approach the programs, and make sure that we feel that what we're launching to our customers and to our employees fit that honest and ethical approach. And with any project, you got to have effective communication and collaboration. And I always want to end this conversation too. It takes excellent customer service to be able to have all this effective communication and collaboration. And from the first meeting with Comdata, we realized that we had a true value partner here, and we have succeeded so far, and look forward to more opportunities. And thank you very much, Keela.
Thank you so much for sharing that great information, Bonnie, Tom, and Liza. Thank you, Keela and Carole, also for joining us today. Also want to thank everyone on the line for your patience at the beginning of today's discussion as we worked through the sound issues that we had. I hope that the rest of today's presentation was clearly audible for everybody and that you found a lot of value in it. We'll move now to the question and answer session. Because we have so many people on the line, we'll be taking questions online. So if you look to your control panel, open the control panel by clicking on the orange arrow on the right side of your screen. Go to the question and answer tab, type in your question, hit send. We'll see it over here, and we'll field out the questions from there. We've already got a couple of questions lined up, and this first one I'm going to shoot to Keela and Carole. How much will it cost me to begin and run one of these prepaid programs, particularly pay cards?
Well, this is Carole. I'll take that, Hannah. Well, it's really not a matter of what it's going to cost, because at the end of the entire process, there's going to be savings involved. But what we tell our customers, your investment is more your time. And the cost of implementing a pay card program is probably just the plastic that you're going to need to extend to your cardholders, no matter what the application is. Very minimal. Internally, you're going to have to decide what integration may have to be in place. It's very little. Comdata has, and most service providers have a web-based tool that you could use. But it's very minimal, and at the end of the process, there'll be savings rather than costs.
Thank you so much, Carole. This next one I'm going to give to Liza. Liza, if you don't mind answering this question, are there states that do not allow the elimination of paper checks, and if so, how do you incorporate that into your program?
Yes, I'll be happy to answer that. There are some states that just have not gotten with it yet. The only state where that has really presented an issue for us in our properties was the state of New Hampshire. We did absolutely go and we still did our educational session. We showed them what the benefits were. So we just highly stressed the benefits to them. And we did get some buy-in from those associates. However, the state is very employee-friendly, and they will not allow the elimination of paper checks altogether.
Great, thank you. Bonnie, I've got one for you right now about the customer refund program, Bonnie and Tom. What was the customer response to that program when you rolled it out, and did you have any, what did you do to help educate your customers on this program?
I'll be glad to take that. This is Bonnie. What we did, well, I'll be real honest with you, but not realize how valuable this program is with our customers until you do roll it out, because it does bring them to the 21st century. We did do a mail out, and of course the card carrier that we developed with Comdata gives the total instructions on what they're receiving and what to do with it, how to put it in their bank, how to cash it. It gives a full detail on what to do. And quite honestly, like I said, you just don't realize how valuable this is. We have received nothing but great response, and I just want to share this little quick story with everyone. One of our primary customers, one of our largest customers, quite honestly, sent us the wrong check. It should have gone somewhere else, and quite honestly, it was a rather large check. So within 24 hours, we had deposited the check, of course, and we reimbursed them, and within 24 hours, they had their prepaid card back with their money back in their bank, and they were so grateful, and they sent a very accommodating letter to our chief operating officer to inform him of how well he thought the system was going for him.
Thank you so much for answering that question, Bonnie. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but Carole, we do have a question about finding a list of all states that don't allow the elimination of paper checks.
Right. There's about 25 of those states, and there is a published list. It is available at the American Payroll pay card portal. If you are working with Comdata today, and you do have a rep that you're working with, they would be happy to share that with you. But by going to the AmericanPayroll.org pay card portal, you'll be able to retrieve those costs. And the states.
Thank you so much, Carole. Keela, I have a question for you now. Can you use the same card for payroll, travel reimbursement, staff incentives, etc.?
You know, every company is different on how they handle their reimbursements. Some companies like to keep reimbursements separate from payroll. So what we've seen is some companies do that together with their payroll file, and some companies use a totally different card for that. So it would just really be how you handle your reimbursement, if you handle that through your payroll file or another file.
Great. Now we have someone who is asking about something that their local bank offers, which is a checklist bank account. Carole, would you mind speaking to maybe some differences between a program like this and a checklist bank account?
Right. Well, they're very similar in that the end result is that an employee receives their pay to a debit card. The banks do offer a checklist system, What you might want to be cautious of is the 24-hour support that your cardholders will need to get, bilingual support, being there all the time. None of the ancillary bank fees that that banks usually charge. You want to make sure your cardholders aren't getting hit with that. They wouldn't be very happy campers. It's against the law, really, to charge up front for an employee to receive their payroll funds. I think those are the major differences. I think that the customer support, and then, of course, one of the things that we really shy away from with our solution, and banks are notorious for, and it's not across the board, is, you know, overdraft fees. Those are very punitive to a cardholder that has a very minimal amount on his card or her card. So those are some of the fundamental differences.
Thank you, Carole. Bonnie and Tom at DexOne, we have a question for you about, you had mentioned significant operational savings, especially with regard to your customer refund program. Can you go over a couple of the costs that are involved in that big number?
Well, you know, one of the major pieces of that is really the people involved in handling the achievement process. You know, so I mean, we have people in AR, AP, general ledger, you know, all, you know, having hands in what do we do with the stale checks and how do we deal with the achievement to the states and so forth. And then also the, you know, the actual cost savings from moving away from the paper checks and not having to print paper checks and the costs involved. I think there was a whole slide in the beginning that detailed the types of expenses that are involved in handling paper checks. So, you know, our estimate over time for the savings of that program, you know, is really rolled up into that number with those considerations in it.
Great, thanks, Tom. Liza, I've got another one for you. Are you printing a check summary for your employees?
We are in the process right now of rolling out paperless pay. So we've betaed it in our corporate office and in a couple of our other locations. So yes, that is on its way. And we are very anxious to get to that point.
And Liza, can you also address some of the things that were included in the rock solid presentation that you mentioned earlier?
Sure. You definitely want to provide very clear instructions on how to use the card. I think that was really a big piece of what we were able to display and illustrate for our associates. You have to remember many of the, or at least for our employee population, we needed to keep in mind that many of these associates have never had to deal with a bank. They've only ever had that paper check to take down to the corner market and cash it. And so one of the things we did right off the bat was we pulled a sample pay card out of one of the welcome kits, and we passed it around the room, and we let the associates see it, touch it, see what it looked like, familiarize themselves, and you could kind of see the eyes opening up a little bit. So that really worked very well. But again, we provide very clear instructions on how to use the card, how they would be able to access the cash once their pay was loaded onto it. We had screenshots of what a point of sale, like a pin pad machine, looks like. If, you know, at your grocery store, you slide that magnetic strip through. You can either enter your PIN to a debit-based transaction or a credit-based transaction. So we gave them very clear instructions on how to do that, how to use the ATM, how to take their, you know, MasterCard branded card into a participating bank and ask for a cash advance to be able to pull every single penny off of their card. So we provided very clear instruction, and it really made everybody feel very at ease. And then another part of just having it rock solid was, again, as I mentioned, we kind of attacked the fee question right off the bat, and we did an illustration of the cost savings of using the pay card versus paying that fee every week to cash their check.
Great, thanks. Well, we have a few more questions, not too much time. If we don't get to your question, we'll make sure to follow up with you after the webinar. I do want to pass this one to Keela. Does Comdata supply the cards, and is there a cost associated with those cards?
Yes, Comdata will supply the cards in conjunction with the company that we're working for. And you know, the cost structure is just an individual thing, and on volume, different situations. So we are the issuer of the cards.
Great, and I want to get to next steps in a second, but I also wanted to ask Bonnie, Tom, and Liza, our guest experts on the line, if you could give one piece of advice to anyone who's thinking about starting a prepaid or pay card program with their business, what would that piece of advice be? Bonnie and Tom, would you like to go first?
Sure, I'll take that one. This may sound very simple, but I think one of the real keys is understanding, taking the time to define up front with the implementation team what's the end result you want from the program. Just like with our prepaid card, we really had to be careful how we planned that. Was that going to be a reloadable card, a one-time use card? Where and how did we want people to be able to get their funds? What would happen if a card was lost? How would we get it replaced? Just kind of understand what it is your end need is as you're developing and designing that program.
Liza?
Okay, and I'm just going to piggyback on what Tom said real quickly, and that is to stay in touch with your implementation team, stay on track with your weekly phone calls or your biweekly phone calls. That was really key. But the other thing that I would like to mention is that just if you're going to implement a pay card solution for your company, just want to make sure you don't have any other big projects on the table at the time. You need to really dedicate some time to brainstorming, setting it up, implementing it, and really being able to concentrate on the program until it is up and running. And that's generally just a matter of a few weeks.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks once again for joining us, Bonnie, Tom, and Liza. Carole, I wanted to go over next steps. Could you address that? If somebody on the line is interested in a prepaid solution with Comdata, what should they do?
Absolutely, and thank everyone for participating today. If you're not already a Comdata client, feel free to call 1-800-COMDATA or go to our website, www.comdata.com, and go to one of our services. We have our services based on the platform, and prepaid is a big platform that you could select and ask for more information, and we'll put you with the proper sales associate within your area.
Great. Well, this concludes today's presentation. If you'd like to continue the conversation about Comdata's prepaid solutions, call us at the number Carole mentioned, visit our website, or even just enter your name and email address, phone number in the question and answer tab. We'll make sure somebody from Carole and Keela's team follows up with you. If you have any further questions, please join our group on LinkedIn. We'll have somebody there all afternoon answering questions about your prepaid solutions or really anything else that you have a question about. And we will provide this recording to you via email tomorrow. Thanks once again for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.